If someone were to make a tier list of the games made by EA in the last 7 to 8 years, it will look something like this. Over the years, many things have changed, but taxes, debts, and EA disappointing its fans remains constant. Being a video game company, EA's main job should be entertaining people. Yet, despite this, it has been voted the most hated company of the year twice. But why is it like this? What precisely is the problem with this company? Before getting into the main portion of the video, I'd quickly like to ask you to subscribe to the channel as it helps out a lot, and while you're at it, leave a like as well. Thank you. On to the video. Well, there are quite a lot of reasons for the hatred towards the company in the recent times, but it all really just boils down to one thing, and that is money. The single thing that perhaps EA is the most known for making is
EA Sports. It's in the game.
more notably the FIFA, Madden, and NBA games. Each year since the game franchises started, EA have released a new game in these franchises each and every year with an updated roster and slightly better graphics. About a decade ago, this may have been acceptable. You know, consoles and PC didn't really have the capability for online updates as games were on CDs. The gameplay on these games over the years has pretty much been the exact same, with the only changes really being minor tweaks to the stats of the players. This today could be easily done each year by updates over the internet, and even if they wanted to add something bigger, which let's be honest, they probably won't, they haven't done it in so many years, could be easily done through online updates. Meaning that making a full price game and purposefully cutting its life cycle short to only about a year is nothing but a way to milk out more money out of the customers by making them buy the exact same game as the last year. Adding salt to the wound is the fact that assets in these supposedly new games are quite often taken from the last year's releases, and the lack of effort put in making a new release each year can be clearly seen. For example, in Madden 20, despite going through an entire development cycle, not a single person in the dev team noticed that the banner reused in the game still read the name of the last year's release. Meaning, not only do you not get a new game despite paying the full price, you don't even get a new banner. In its earlier days, before the late 90s, EA's business strategy revolved around publishing games made by other developers and studios. This changed in 1997 when EA, instead of publishing games made by other developers, started outright buying the studios. In 1997, EA brought Maxis, subsequently gaining all the rights to the SimCity franchise. And well, it was all downhill for the franchise and the studio from there, which was shut down in 2015. This is a trend that has been way too familiar with EA. They will buy a studio and then proceed to completely run it into the ground due to their extreme mismanagement of the studio and its titles. Visceral Studios, the maker of Dead Space, were acquired and then shut down by EA. Pandemic Studios was bought in 2008 and was shut down only a year after its acquisition. Mythic Studios, Origin, Black Box Games are some of the many studios which have been shut down by EA. After shutting down these studios, EA gained full and exclusive rights to the studio titles, which brings me to the next point. EA does not innovate, even in the slightest. After acquiring the intellectual rights to the games, EA just keep rebranding and reusing the same titles over and over again, making remakes, spin-offs, and just absolutely terrible sequels with little to no attempt at experimentation in making the game better. In fact, it's almost always worse than the last one. On top of the already bad games is the added playable DLCs. Rather than being added content on top of the existing game, EA's DLCs are portions of the game that should have been included with the original purchase of the game. Instead of releasing the full game in one go, EA releases 70% of its game on release and then releases the other 30% later on in the form of DLCs, which often cost the same or more than the game itself, effectively skyrocketing the price of the game to double of what it should be. The DLCs in these games are not really optionals. If you want the full experience of the game, you will have to buy it. And even on buying all the DLCs you can possibly buy, you're still met with highly predatory ways to get money from you when you enter the game through microtransactions. The final nail in the coffin, that is EA's reputation. Perhaps the thing that the company is the most infamous for is without a doubt its highly predatory disguised gambling mechanics. Almost all the games in the industry suffer with this problem, but EA are definitely the ones who misuse it the most. Every game made by EA, whether it be single player or multiplayer, competitive or casual, PvP or not, will in some way, shape or form have the much ridiculed loot boxes in them. Any purchase you make in anything made by EA will never be straightforward. It has all been perfected down to the last minute detail to drain you off of as much money as efficiently as possible. Oh, so you really like that one particular skin? Well, guess what? First, need to buy in-game currencies that is highly overpriced for a game that you have already paid to play. Then buy 15 loot boxes that have a 1% chance of getting what you want. You might not get what you want, but by the time you'll already have invested enough money that it feels like a waste to not spend a little bit more to get the item you so desperately want. And by the time you realize you've already spent a lot more money than you should have, and you still might not even have the item you wanted in the first place. And worst of all, these items sometimes make the game a lot easier, making it very much a pay to win situations in online multiplayer games. And all this, maybe, just maybe, as small as that maybe, could have been worth it only if they did a good job at making the main game. In recent times, not a single EA game comes to my mind when I hear about good AAA titles. Each one of them has found a way to disappoint some way or each one of them has found a way to disappoint in some way or the other. In most of EA's releases, the lack of polish, planning, management, and most of all, any passion to make the game in the first place is completely absent. Sure, there are occasional good ones, but they are just very few and far between in the vast sea of mediocrity. Mass Effect Andromeda, Anthem, Battlefield 2042, a lot of the yearly sports games, the constant releases of new Call of Duty games so often, all just feel like soulless cash grabs with as little effort as possible put in them, just to make sure that the game could barely work. In Battlefield 2042, for example, the promise was that the complete exclusion of the single player campaign would mean that the multiplayer got more time to be fleshed out, and well, we all know how that turned out to be. EA each time promises something groundbreaking only to fall short on its promises all the time, and that pretty much has been the story of the company. There are a lot of things wrong with it, and it doesn't look like it's gonna change anytime soon. And that about pretty much covers everything up. Hope you liked the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And with that being said, I'll see you in the next one.